What's up, YouTube, and welcome to the maiden voyage of Spector's Game Room. I had this whole idea to do this intro video, but realized that no one's gonna watch this video already, so why do an intro video that explains the channel when I could just quickly explain it here? What we're doing? What is this whole thing about? Games that were never released in North America. That could be from literally any generation of gaming, but specifically we're gonna look at the Super Nintendo, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, maybe some NES, maybe Genesis, because now that I don't have to use that wonky fucking controller that came with the Genesis, I actually kind of like the console. Anyways, with all that jazz out of the way, let's get into the video proper. So today we are looking at one of my favorite games to never leave Japan, and that is Choujikuu Yousai Macross Scrambled Valkyrie, or Super Dimension Fortress Macross Scrambled Valkyrie, if my terrible Japanese was not to your liking. Developed by Winkysoft, which is the greatest developer name imaginable, and published by Zemuse. Zemuse? I have no idea how to pronounce this game publisher. Anyways, regardless of how you pronounce the name of this publisher, this is a premier shoot 'em up for the Super Famicom. Right out of the gate, I just want to say that I am a huge fan of the genre, but I only recently got into them. Like, somewhere over the past 2 or 3 years. Growing up, I only had Gradius and UN Squadron for the SNES, and while I played Gradius and died because of one-hit deaths, I never really touched UN Squadron until very recently, and it probably had to do with the fact that it was called UN Squadron, which is just the most unfortunate title for an awesome game. Unlike the Japanese title, Hepburn Area Hachijuhachi, which my rudimentary knowledge of Japanese translates into Hepburn Area 88. UN Squadron sounds like I'm about to go on like a peacekeeping mission to Kosovo or something like that. That's a horrible name, but anyways, I'm getting off topic here. We're not talking about UN Squadron, we're talking about Macross Scrambled Valkyrie. And it was this shoot 'em up, along with UN Squadron, that got me into shoot 'em ups because both of them feature not one-hit deaths, but life bars instead. And of course, something that separated this game from UN Squadron, not to say that UN Squadron doesn't have an awesome soundtrack, but my god, Macross Scrambled Valkyrie has one of the best gaming soundtracks I have ever heard in my life. But we just met, don't take my word for it. Have a listen for the next couple seconds. That was worth the price of admission in and of itself. But there's also an added bonus of, awesome gameplay. Now, I already went over the health bar, not the one-hit deaths. But just to touch on that again really quickly, those one-hit deaths were always so killer for me. And yes, I did intend that pun. I actually wrote it in the script here. You watch that poor bastard Vic Viper die horribly in an explosion, and you restart once again with no power-ups. You have no speed boost, no nothing. It's frustrating. Macross, on the other hand, doesn't have a single checkpoint. Beat the level on one health bar or be doomed. The lack of checkpoints are definitely compensated by having a health bar, and the game is pretty generous in terms of giving you power-ups and health replenishments throughout the run of each level. Don't get me wrong, the damage can pile up very fast, but it's still better than one-hit deaths, and you will need every last bit of health because this game is harder than a sack of doorknobs.
Can you swing a sack of doorknobs?
Can I?
But what this game does have going for it, as I mentioned already, is the easy mode, which genuinely makes this game easy. For new players, or for someone who just wants to have a bit of fun that's not overly challenging. Like I said, this game got me into shoot 'em ups, and it would not have done that if it did not have an easy mode. Normal mode, on the other hand, is a little bit of a challenge for the seasoned veteran, but again, it's not too ridiculous. It does get very difficult as the game progresses, and then the hardest difficulty is really hard. If you're a really good shoot 'em up player, then you're gonna have a lot of fun with this level. As far as the gameplay itself, you have 3 characters to choose from: Hikaru, Max, and Milia, all of which have their own strengths and weaknesses. I personally choose to play as Max most of the time because he has super cheap homing missile attack in one of his forms. Now, there's a whole anime around this game that I never watched. I was too busy watching Mobile Suit Gundam Wing and Transformers as a kid to pay attention to anything else mech suit or giant robot related. The show was apparently really good and had a song component, which probably explains the rad soundtrack, which I'm going to play again for a couple seconds because it's so freaking good. Anyways, your mech suit is called a Batroid, sure, and it's your fully transformed mech robot form. Your character will typically have the strongest attack in this form, but you're also a bigger and slower target. Max has little adorable legs dangling back and forth as you rock the D-pad. It's this little things. That's adorable, perfect. I love the sprite work, love the whole thing. Honestly, the game's presentation is fantastic. And did I mention the music? The middle form is called the Jurwalker, sure, whatever the fuck that means. And it's something of a transformation in between, kind of like the malfunctioning Megatron from Beast Wars. I don't really have much to say about it because this middle form is not really fast, not really slow. In the fighter form, you basically get a straightforward attack and a much faster overall movement speed. Each of the forms can be upgraded 2 times, and you have to be in that form to actually upgrade that particular power-up. But you don't lose it unless you're in that form and you get damage. So as long as you receive upgrades in, you know, your Jurwalker form, if you will, you could take hits in your fighter form and you won't lose those power-ups at all, even if you have a sliver of health remaining, which really does come in handy because you can end up saving, say for example, your stronger attack, like your Batroid, for the final phase of a boss fight and try and get as far as you can in your fighter form before that point. You get tons of continues as well, and every single time you die, you do go back to the main menu, but you start from that particular level. And something that I found out is that you have full access to the menu options, so that if you do get far in the game and you do find that you're just dying constantly, you could drop the difficulty. Now, the levels themselves are fairly long, but nothing crazy, and they're pretty varied. I mean, each level can be as long as it wants to with music like this, especially like Stage 5 with its sort of 90s futuristic dystopian vibe going on. What was it with the 90s and the futuristic dystopian settings in the not too distant future of the 2020s? It was always 2020s. If they only knew what the 2020s were actually going to be. TikTok, Ubers, and one really long-ass pandemic. In any case, if it isn't obvious, I fucking love this game. I actually own a reproduction cart of this game, which I never do. I don't like reproduction carts for obvious reasons of, you know, forgeries and things like that, but I wanted something I could play in my Super Nintendo, so I actually picked it up. It's got this cool red spray paint on it, just to make it even more obvious that it's a reproduction cart. If you wanted to pick up this game for the Super Famicom, it's gonna run you about $120 for a decent copy. And if you know what I know now, all you gotta do is remove the tabs on the inside of your Super Nintendo, and you can play that version instead of spending $40 for a reproduction cart like a stupid idiot. Anyways, couldn't recommend this game more highly if I jumped through the screen and recommended it right in front of your face, because that makes sense. The game is completely English friendly, and despite being an SNES Super Famicom game, very little slowdown for a shoot 'em up, which is surprising. At any rate, Macross Scrambled Valkyrie is the perfect way to kick off this totally necessary review series of mine with glowing reviews, and just check it out. You're gonna enjoy it, you're gonna have a great time, whether you like shoot 'em ups or not. This is gonna be one that you will go back to in years to come. Anyways, as always, I'm Spector, and thanks for stopping by my game room.